The Pittsburgh Steelers just delivered one of their most complete performances of the season, and it came at the perfect time. With the bye week now in full swing and a string of divisional matchups on the horizon, this team has done more than just win a game. They've made a statement. And let's be real, the biggest victory wasn't just on the scoreboard. It happened on the sidelines, in the film rooms, and deep within the minds of the coaching staff, who finally decided to pivot, to adapt, to simplify. And the result? A gritty, smart, and well-executed win against a Minnesota team that didn't roll over. Now, let's break this down, starting with the chess match between Pittsburgh's coordinators and Minnesota's schemes. Everyone in the league knows how Brian Flores loves to dial up those so-called exotic blitzes. That's the label he's earned, whether it's fair or not. But blitzes are blitzes, right? What makes one exotic and the other not? Maybe it's all marketing. Still, if you're a defensive coordinator in this league and people start attaching words like exotic to your style, chances are you're doing something creative or confusing. Well, guess what? Arthur Smith wasn't impressed. In fact, he looked straight at that Minnesota front, studied the blitz-heavy tendencies, and responded with a plan that was anything but cute. It was brute force. Power football. He brought in the big bodies, Darnell Washington, Spencer Anderson, and others, and said, "You want to send small, fast guys to crash the line? Cool. We'll knock them on their backs." And that's exactly what happened. The Steelers didn't just scheme around the blitz. They physically overwhelmed it. They collapsed the edge, pushed through the middle, and controlled the tempo. But that's only half the story. Because as well as the offense performed, and yes, they did plenty right, the defense might have been even more impressive. Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin deserve a serious nod for what they pulled off. No, they didn't completely shut down Carson Wentz, who still racked up over 350 yards through the air. But they absolutely dominated every other part of the Vikings' attack. Holding Minnesota's running backs to just 52 rushing yards? That's not a coincidence. That's game planning. That's execution. That's hunger. Now add to that 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 6 sacks, and 10 tackles for loss. Those numbers don't happen by accident. They're the result of a defense playing fast, confident, and most importantly, free. And here's the kicker. It all started with a decision to simplify. That's right. After several weeks of inconsistent performances and confusion on that side of the ball, the coaching staff took a hard look at the playbook and said, "This is too much." With all the player turnover, injuries, and new faces trying to mesh, it was time to strip things back. Focus on fundamentals. Trust instincts. And according to players who spoke out afterward, that's exactly what happened. They were given a cleaner, leaner defensive game plan and told to just go out there and play. No overthinking. No paralysis by analysis. Just football. And the inside linebackers thrived in that environment. Peyton Wilson, 13 tackles, including 2 for a loss. Patrick Queen, 11 tackles with 3 for a loss. These weren't empty stats. These were tone-setting, game-shaping numbers that came from physicality, awareness, and instinct. Queen's been a steady presence all season, but Wilson's emergence in this game was eye-opening. He looked like a different player. Faster, sharper, more decisive. That's the effect of clarity. That's what happens when guys know what they're supposed to do and don't have to second-guess. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Injuries continued to pile up, and the secondary took a big hit. Losing Jalen Ramsey, a key piece to that defense, already felt like a gut punch. But then Brandon Echols went down too. So when Jordan Addison broke free for that 80-yard dash late in the game, it wasn't exactly shocking. The Steelers were down to backup plans of backup plans. Still, that play stood out not just because it was a blown coverage, but because of what happened afterward. Austin stood in front of the media and owned it. No excuses. No shifting blame. He said flat out, "That one's on me. I got to give my guys something simpler when attrition hits." That kind of accountability is rare in today's NFL. It's even rarer to see it from coordinators, not just the head coach. And it matters, because a team that doesn't self-reflect can improve. But this Steelers squad is clearly looking in the mirror and making real changes. What's most impressive isn't just the win itself, but the way it was earned. This wasn't about riding a couple of lucky breaks or a single-star performance. This was about a team that made real, meaningful adjustments on both sides of the ball. The offense adapted to a unique challenge and responded with a clear identity. The defense simplified, executed, and flew around the field like they had something to prove. All of it together led to a win that feels bigger than the final score. And let's not overlook the timing. Right before the bye week, with divisional games looming large, this was the performance that the Steelers desperately needed. It resets the tone. It changes the narrative. Instead of going into the break with lingering questions and swirling doubt, this team heads in with momentum, and maybe even a sense of identity starting to take shape. Because for the first time this season, you could feel it. The offense and defense weren't just functioning separately. They were feeding off each other. They were executing with confidence. The sideline wasn't frantic, it was focused. And that says a lot about the culture being built right now. There's a long road ahead, and nobody's punching playoff tickets in October. But you'd rather be a team figuring things out and improving each week than one clinging to early success. And that's where the Steelers find themselves now. They're not perfect, but they're learning. They're adjusting. And they're starting to look like a team that believes in itself again. While most of the headlines are focused on the result and the obvious box score numbers, what truly matters from this win is how it reflects a philosophical shift within the organization. It's easy to celebrate a 3-point victory, especially when it comes against a team with a tricky defensive identity like Minnesota. But this goes deeper than just scheme versus scheme. This was about the Steelers showing maturity, from the staff down to the rookies. And that's not always guaranteed, especially for a team that's been battling inconsistency all season long. Let's go back to Arthur Smith's game plan for a second. When you look at the kind of pressure Minnesota tries to generate, especially with those overload looks and delayed blitzes, most offensive coordinators might try to go finesse. Quick releases, screens, misdirection, anything to slow down the rush. But Smith went the other way. He basically dared the Vikings to keep sending their heat by stacking size on the line and challenging them to stand up to it. He bet that the physicality of his guys would wear them down. And he was right. When you commit to running the football into the teeth of the defense and come out ahead, that's not just about stats. That's about identity. That's a team saying, this is who we are. This is how we're going to win. You could see that attitude across the board. Guys finishing blocks, receivers engaging in the run game, even tight ends getting gritty in the trenches. That doesn't happen unless the locker room buys in. And right now, it really feels like they're doing just that. That matters. Because when you get to the back half of the season, especially with games coming up against rivals that know you inside out, toughness becomes more valuable than talent. Discipline becomes more important than design. Defensively, that same kind of attitude showed up in spades. The tackles for loss weren't just the result of clever stunts or disguised pressures, though there were some of those sprinkled in. It was mostly just players winning their matchups. Linebackers filling gaps before the play could develop. Edge rushers setting the tone early and forcing runs back inside. Defensive backs closing on the ball with intent. It looked like a defense that wasn't reacting, but dictating. And the ripple effect of that kind of performance is huge. You start to get confidence in the younger guys. Peyton Wilson showed what happens when the game slows down and he can play fast. His reads were sharp, his tackling was clean, and for the first time, you got a glimpse of why the staff was so high on him coming out of college. Patrick Queen continues to play like the leader this defense needed. Vocal, active, and aggressive. When those two are clicking like they were, it allows the defensive line to be more creative and the secondary to stay a step ahead. And they needed every bit of that discipline, especially when the secondary started falling apart due to injuries. Losing Jalen Ramsey was a blow, not just for his talent, but for his leadership. Then watching Brandon Eccles go down as well meant the defense had to scramble. You don't prepare for that. But the fact that they held it together until the Addison bomb shows you that the coaching and preparation throughout the week paid off. One blown play doesn't erase a game full of wins. And to hear Terrell Austin own that moment afterward, taking responsibility instead of hiding behind excuses, that tells you everything about the accountability in this building right now. Players respect that. When a coach says, "That's on me, I'll fix it," the locker room listens. And that kind of honesty can hold a team together when things get tough. It's one thing to ride a hot streak when everything's going your way. It's another to adapt, make changes, simplify your approach, and still execute under pressure. That's what the Steelers just did. And the timing couldn't be better. Coming into this season, there were expectations. Not necessarily that Pittsburgh would be Super Bowl bound, but that the team would take a step forward. The early part of the season didn't really live up to those hopes. There were moments, flashes of brilliance from the offense, tough stands by the defense, but nothing consistent. That's why this last game feels different. It wasn't just a win, it was a blueprint. A look at what this team can be if they lean into their strengths, stay healthy, and keep things simple. Even the post-game energy reflected that. You didn't see wild celebrations or over-the-top quotes. You saw focus. You saw leaders talking about what still needs to improve. You saw a team acting like they know the job isn't done. That kind of mindset is dangerous in the best way possible. It's the kind of mindset that leads to late-season runs and playoff pushes. Because once you start stacking performances, belief becomes hard to shake. And let's talk a little more about the impact of the bye week, because this isn't just a break in the schedule. It's an opportunity. It gives injured players time to recover. It gives the staff more film to work with, more clarity on what's working and what needs to be tossed. But most importantly, it gives momentum room to breathe. It allows the team to marinate in a win, to reinforce the habits that brought it about, and to build on that foundation without the immediate pressure of another game day. When the Steelers return from this break, they'll be staring down the barrel of some brutal AFC North matchups. These are games that don't just test your scheme, they test your soul. Cold weather, familiar opponents, hostile environments. That's when we'll really see what kind of transformation has taken place. Because winning one game is a nice step. Turning it into a trend is where it gets real. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Rumors have been swirling in Pittsburgh, and today, the whispers turned into headlines. Jonathan Taylor has officially been presented by the Steelers, and the buzz around Heinz Field is electric. While the team's press release confirmed his arrival, insiders hint that the backfield could become one of the most explosive in the league, a tantalizing prospect for fans starved for big plays. Sources close to the locker room say the coaching staff has been quietly strategizing ways to maximize Taylor's devastating speed and vision, suggesting the Steelers may be on the brink of redefining their ground game. Analysts and fans alike are speculating about how Taylor will mesh with the current offensive scheme. Some say he could immediately become a dual-threat weapon, capable of breaking tackles and shifting defenses with ease. Others whisper about the chemistry between Taylor and the team's quarterback, a dynamic that could either ignite the Steelers' offense or require a few weeks of adjustment. But the prevailing sentiment? Excitement. Pure, unfiltered anticipation. In conversations around Pittsburgh sports bars and social media threads, the name Jonathan Taylor is already being shouted with a mix of hope and adrenaline. There's also talk that Taylor's presence could shake up the team's roster. Coaches are reportedly considering more innovative packages to capitalize on his talents, and some believe this move signals a larger, more aggressive offseason plan. Could this be the first step in transforming the Steelers into a top-tier offensive powerhouse? Only time will tell, but the early buzz is hard to ignore. Scouts suggest defenses across the league are already taking note, anticipating a new threat they may struggle to contain. For now, all eyes are on Pittsburgh. Fans are imagining long touchdown runs, highlight reels, and perhaps a season that exceeds even the wildest expectations. Whether Taylor's arrival is the game changer everyone hopes for or just another chapter in NFL theater, one thing is certain. The Steelers' backfield has just become the talk of the league, and the rumor mill is running hotter than ever. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.